The mate bond is supposed to be sacred, unbreakable, written in the stars by the moon goddess herself. A love so pure it transcends choice, transcends doubt, transcends everything mortal and flawed about us. That's what the songs say. What the elders preach. What every young Omega dreams of in the dark hours before dawn. But dreams and reality rarely share the same language. Reality is standing in a ceremonial circle, wearing white that feels more like surrender than celebration. Reality is seeing your fated mate, chosen by divine will itself, look at you with eyes as cold as winter ice. Reality is learning that destiny doesn't promise love. It only promises binding. And sometimes, being bound to someone who doesn't want you is its own special kind of hell. My name is Tamara Rollins, and I am Omega. Not just any Omega, a broken one. While my sister shifted into her wolf at 13, radiant and powerful, I remained trapped in this fragile human skin, 23 years old, and still no wolf. No shift. No howl rising in my throat when the full moon calls. The pack whispered that I was cursed, defective, a Rollins in name only. And when Alpha Harry Thornridge discovered I was his fated mate, he didn't fall to his knees in gratitude. He didn't sweep me into his arms and promise me forever. He looked at me like I was something rotting he'd found on the bottom of his boot. This is the story of how my mate punished me at our own mating ceremony. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because I had the audacity to exist. And how, in collapsing under the weight of his cruelty, I finally learned to stand. Before we dive into today's story, I want to share an amazing book with you, The Alpha's Second Chance. You can see the cover on your screen right now, is a powerful tale of redemption and love. If you enjoy werewolf romance with deep emotional journeys, check the link in the description below. Now, let's continue. Chapter 1. The morning of my mating ceremony, I woke up to find my sister Lyra sitting at the foot of my bed, watching me with something that looked almost like pity. "You don't have to go through with this," she said softly, her amber eyes so like our father's reflecting the pale dawn light filtering through my window. I sat up slowly, pulling the thin blanket around my shoulders. Even in late spring, I was always cold, another failing of my wolfless body. Yes, I do. The bond can be rejected. Harry could reject me. I finished for her, my voice flat. And then what, Lyra? I become a rejected Omega with no wolf, no mate, and no future. At least this way, I'm claimed. At least this way, the pack has to acknowledge my existence. Lyra's jaw tightened. She was everything I wasn't: strong, shifted, respected. She'd found her mate 2 years ago, a kind beta named Finn, who looked at her like she hung the moon. I'd watched them at their ceremony, seen the way he'd marked her with reverence, the way she'd melted into his arms. I knew my ceremony would be nothing like that. "Father wants to see you," Lyra said finally, standing. "He's in his study." Of course he did. Alpha Garrett Rollins always had something to say, especially when it involved maintaining appearances. I dressed quickly in simple clothes. There was no point in anything elaborate yet. The ceremonial dress would come later, when they painted me up like a prize mare for auction. The walk to my father's study felt longer than usual. Pack members I passed in the hallways averted their eyes, some quickly, others with barely concealed disdain. I'd learned years ago not to expect warmth from them. To wolves, strength was everything, and I had none. My father didn't look up when I entered. He was reviewing documents at his desk, his silver-streaked hair catching the morning light. Even at 53, he was formidable, broad-shouldered, commanding, everything an alpha should be. Everything I wasn't. "Tamara," he finally acknowledged me, setting down his pen. "Sit." I sat in the chair across from him, folding my hands in my lap. Proper. Demure. Invisible. Alpha Thornridge arrived last night with his delegation, my father began, his tone businesslike. "The ceremony will proceed at sunset, as planned. The council has approved all arrangements." "Yes, father. There are concerns." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with clinical detachment. "Harry has made it clear he's not pleased with this match." Something twisted in my chest, sharp and familiar. "I'm aware. The mate bond is absolute," my father continued, as if I hadn't spoken. But how that bond is honored is subject to interpretation. Harry is within his rights to structure the relationship as he sees fit. I understood what he wasn't saying. Harry could claim me, mark me, bind me to him, and then lock me away somewhere and forget I existed. The bond would be satisfied. The moon goddess's will would be done, and I would spend the rest of my life as nothing more than a legal footnote in the Thornridge Pack registry. I'll do whatever is required of me, I said quietly. My father's expression softened slightly, or maybe I just imagined it. You're a Rollins, Tamara. Broken or not, you carry our bloodline. Don't disgrace it. Don't disgrace it more than you already have, he meant. I won't, I promised, and hoped it was a promise I could keep. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of preparations I had no say in. Pack females I barely knew descended on my room, stripping me, bathing me, scrubbing my skin until it was raw and pink. They rubbed oils into my hair, my shoulders, my wrists, anywhere an alpha might want to scent me. No one spoke to me directly. They spoke around me, over me, about me. She's so small. Do you think she'll survive the marking? Poor Alpha Harry, bound to a wolfless Omega. The moon goddess must be testing him. I'd learned to go somewhere else in my mind during moments like these. I retreated into the stories I told myself, tales of Omegas who were brave, who had worth beyond their biology, who mattered. In my head, I could be anything. In my head, I could shift into a wolf with fur like starlight and run until my paws bled. In reality, I was just meat being prepared for consumption. The ceremonial dress was beautiful, I had to admit. White silk that flowed like water, with delicate silver embroidery along the bodice and sleeves. It was modest, high-necked, long-sleeved, because unmated Omegas were meant to be pure, untouched, pristine. The irony was that I'd never had a choice in my purity. No wolf wanted to touch a broken Omega. I was 23 and had never even been kissed. You look lovely, Lyra said when she came to collect me. She'd changed into her own formal dress, deep green, that brought out her eyes. As my only sister, she'd stand with me during the ceremony. Moral support for the sacrificial lamb. I look like a ghost, I replied, staring at my reflection. The white dress washed out my already pale skin. My dark hair had been braided and pinned elaborately, making my face look even thinner than usual. My gray eyes, the one feature I'd inherited from my mother, stared back at me with barely concealed dread. Tamara, it's fine, I cut her off. I'm fine. Let's just get this over with. The ceremony grounds were in the center of Pack territory, a sacred clearing surrounded by ancient oak trees. As Lyra and I approached, I could see the entire pack had assembled, nearly 200 wolves, all dressed in their finest, all waiting to witness my binding. And there, at the center of it all, stood Alpha Harry Thornridge. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are, tall easily, 6'4", with broad shoulders and a warrior's build. His dark hair was cut short, military precise. His eyes were a striking ice blue that seemed to look straight through everything they touched. He wore all black, stark, and severe, like he was attending a funeral instead of a mating. Maybe he was. When his eyes locked onto mine across the clearing, I felt the mate bond flare to life in my chest. A golden thread of connection that had been dormant until this moment. The pull was magnetic, undeniable, woven into the very fabric of my soul. My wolf, the one that didn't exist, should have been howling for him, should have been clawing at my skin to get closer, to touch, to claim and be claimed. Instead, all I felt was the hollowness of that absence, and the ice-cold dread as I watched Harry's expression harden into something cruel. He didn't want me. The bond didn't matter. Destiny didn't matter. I was about to bind myself to a man who looked at me like I was his punishment. It's time, my father said, appearing at my other side. His hand on my elbow was firm, unyielding. There would be no running, no escape. Together, we walked toward the ceremonial circle, toward Harry, toward a future I couldn't begin to imagine. And with every step, that golden thread in my chest pulled tighter, 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 until I couldn't tell if it was connecting me to my mate or slowly strangling me. Chapter 2. The Ceremony of Shame. The Elder Council stood at the edge of the ceremonial circle, their faces solemn masks of tradition and authority. Elder Miriam, the oldest among them at nearly 90, stepped forward with the ceremonial blade silver, ancient, inscribed with runes that predated our pack by centuries. My father released my elbow, and suddenly I was standing alone at the edge of the circle. Harry stood on the opposite side, 20 feet away. But it might as well have been miles. The mate bond hummed between us, insistent, demanding acknowledgement. He still hadn't looked directly at me. Not really. His gaze skimmed over me like I was furniture. "We gather under the witness of the moon goddess," Elder Miriam began, her voice carrying across the silent clearing, "to bind two souls chosen by fate itself. The bond between Alpha and Omega is sacred, unbreakable, eternal. What the goddess has joined, no wolf may separate." Standard ceremony words. I'd heard them at dozens of matings over the years. Usually, they sounded romantic, hopeful. Now they sounded like a prison sentence being read aloud. "Alpha Harry Thornridge of the Northern Pack," Miriam continued. "Do you accept this Omega as your fated mate, to claim, to protect, to honor until death parts you?" The pause was too long. Long enough that whispers started rippling through the assembled wolves. Long enough that I felt heat creep up my neck in humiliation. "I accept what the moon goddess has given me," Harry finally said, his voice cold and formal. Not, "I accept her," not, "I accept Tamara." Just, acceptance of divine mandate. Like accepting a tax bill or a prison term. Something cracked inside my chest, but I kept my face neutral. I'd had 23 years of practice at hiding pain. "Tamara Rollins of the Western Pack." Miriam turned to me. "Do you accept this Alpha as your fated mate? To submit to serve, to honor until death parts you?" The words caught in my throat. Submit to, serve. The ceremony for Alphas was about protection and honor. For Omegas, it was about obedience and surrender. But what choice did I have? Reject him here, publicly, and I'd be packless, wolfless, mateless, a triple death sentence in our world. "I accept," I whispered. "Louder," Harry said suddenly, his ice blue eyes finally fixing on me with an intensity that made me flinch. "If you're going to bind yourself to me, at least have the spine to say it clearly." The cruelty in his tone was like a slap. Around us, I heard shocked murmurs. This wasn't how mating ceremonies went. This wasn't how Alphas treated their fated mates, even reluctant ones. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "I accept," I said, louder now, my voice steady even as my hands trembled. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance that I hadn't crumbled. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold mask. "Enter the circle," Elder Miriam instructed. I stepped forward. So did Harry. We met in the center, standing close enough that I could smell him pine and snow and something wild that made the empty space where my wolf should be ache with longing. He was so much taller than me. I had to tilt my head back to look at him. Up close, I could see the small scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the sharp line of his jaw, the barely leashed power in his frame. "Your wrists," Miriam said, approaching with the ceremonial blade. I extended my hands, palms up. Harry did the same. The elder made quick, precise cuts across both our wrists, deep enough to bleed, not deep enough to scar. My blood welled up, dark red against pale skin. "Join hands," Miriam commanded. Harry's hands were rough, calloused, warm. He gripped my wrists firmly enough to hurt, pressing our bleeding wounds together. The ceremonial binding blood to blood, life to life. "Speak your oaths," Miriam said. This was the part where mates usually spoke from the heart, promising love and devotion and partnership. I'd heard Lyra and Finn's oaths beautiful, personal, tender. Harry's jaw tightened. "I claim you as mine," he said, each word clipped and precise. "My mate. My Omega. Bound by blood and moon law. What's mine? I keep. Not, I love you. Not, I'll cherish you. Just ownership. Possession." It was my turn. I should have responded with the traditional Omega oath: submission, service, devotion. But something in me rebelled against giving him even that small victory. "I accept your claim," I said quietly, holding his gaze. I am bound to you by blood and moon law. What I am, I remain. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't the proper response, and we both knew it. But it also wasn't technically wrong. I hadn't rejected the bond or refused my role. I just edited it. The bond is sealed, Elder Miriam announced, though her expression suggested she'd noticed the deviation too. Let all witness. These two are mated, bound until death. Around us, the pack howled their approval, a sound that should have been joyous but felt hollow. Harry released my wrists abruptly, and I had to resist the urge to cradle them against my chest. They throbbed where he'd gripped too hard, where our blood had mingled. The marking, Elder Miriam said, and the clearing fell silent again. This was the part I'd been dreading most. The Alpha's mark, his bite on an Omega's throat, sealing the bond permanently, letting every wolf for miles know who I belonged to. Traditionally, it was done gently, intimately. A moment of connection between mates. I knew, looking at Harry's cold expression, that nothing about this would be traditional. Kneel, he said. Another ripple of shock through the crowd. Alphas usually cradled their Omegas for the marking, supporting them, gentling them through what could be painful. They didn't order them to their knees like subordinates. Harry, my father's voice called out, warning in his tone. That's not. She's my mate. Harry cut him off, his eyes never leaving mine. Or did you lie about accepting my authority over her? Checkmate. My father had agreed to this union, had given me to Harry. To interfere now would be to question the very bond he'd just witnessed sealed. I saw the moment my father made his choice, and it wasn't me. He stepped back, silent. Lyra made a soft sound of protest, but Finn held her back. No one would help me. No one could. Not without violating pack law and tradition. I was alone. Slowly, keeping my chin up, I knelt in the ceremonial circle. The grass was cool beneath my knees. The white silk of my dress pooled around me like a cloud. Or like spilled milk. Wasted and useless. Harry circled behind me, and I couldn't help the way my shoulders tensed. Every instinct I had screamed danger, even as the mate bond crooned for his touch. Tilt your head, he ordered. Expose your throat. I did, baring the right side of my neck where the mate mark would go. My pulse hammered visibly under my skin. I wondered if he could see it, could see how terrified I was. His hand came to rest on my left shoulder, holding me in place. His grip was iron. This is what you wanted, isn't it? He murmured, low enough that only I could hear. To be claimed by an alpha? To finally belong to someone? Before I could respond, his teeth sank into my throat. I'd been told the marking could hurt, but nothing prepared me for this. It wasn't just pain, it was fire and ice and electricity all at once, racing through every nerve ending. The mate bond roared to life, fully activated, connecting us in ways that went beyond physical. I could feel him, his anger, his resentment, his absolute rejection of what we were to each other. It poured through the bond like poison. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I'd be damned if I gave him that satisfaction. Harry bit down harder, deeper than necessary. Marking an Omega should take seconds. He held on for what felt like minutes, making sure it would hurt more, scar worse, remind me every day of this moment. When he finally released me, I swayed. Blood trickled hot down my neck, soaking into the white silk. The world tilted, gray at the edges. Stand up, Harry said coldly. I tried. I got one foot under me, then the other, but my legs wouldn't hold. The blood loss, the pain, the shock, it was too much. My body had already been weak before this. Now it was betraying me completely. I collapsed back to my knees, gasping. I said, stand up, Harry repeated, no sympathy in his voice. Or are you really this pathetic? She needs a healer, someone called out Lyra, desperate. She's bleeding too much. She needs to be stronger, Harry countered. She's an alpha's mate now. She doesn't get to be weak. I tried again, forcing my shaking legs to support me. I got halfway up before my vision went black at the edges, and I crumpled completely, my face hitting the grass. The last thing I heard before unconsciousness took me was Harry's disgusted voice. Get her out of my sight. I woke in a strange room, in a strange bed, with my throat on fire. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back: the ceremony, the marking, the collapse, the humiliation of falling at my mate's feet while he looked down at me with contempt. I sat up slowly, and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through my neck, and I raised a hand to touch the mark. Bandaged, thankfully. But I could feel the heat of infection through the gauze. He'd marked me too deeply, viciously. The wound should have been healing already. Alpha saliva in a mate's bite usually accelerated healing, but whatever Harry had done, it wasn't healing right. The room I was in was luxurious, far nicer than my room back home. Silk curtains, plush carpets, furniture that looked handcrafted and expensive. This had to be the Thornridge pack house, my new home, my prison. A knock at the door made me jump. "Come in," I called out, my voice hoarse. A young woman entered, maybe 19 or 20, with kind eyes and nervous energy. She bobbed a quick curtsy. "Luna," she said, and I realized with a jolt that was me now. Luna Tamara Thornridge. Alpha Harry's mate, and the Omega of this pack. "I'm Dessa, assigned to your service. How are you feeling?" "Like I was mauled," I said honestly. Dessa winced sympathetically. "The pack healer says your mark will scar. She's never seen, that is." She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "She's never seen an alpha mark his mate like he wanted to kill her?" I finished. Dessa's silence was answer enough. "Where is Alpha Harry?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "In his study. He gave strict orders not to be disturbed." Dessa moved to the bedside table, where a tray of food waited. "You should eat. You lost a lot of blood." I wasn't hungry, but I forced myself to take the offered soup. I would need my strength. Whatever was coming next, and I had no illusions that Harry was done punishing me. I would need to be stronger than I'd been at the ceremony. "Dessa," I said carefully, "what do you know about Alpha Harry? About why he's like this?" The young woman's face shuddered. "It's not my place to speak of the Alpha, Luna. I'm not asking for gossip. I'm asking for survival." I met her eyes. "Please. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Dessa hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They say he asked the moon goddess to give him a strong mate, a warrior Omega who could stand beside him in battle, who could give him strong heirs. And then she gave him a wolfless, broken Omega who can't even stand through her own mating ceremony." I finished bitterly. "He feels betrayed," Dessa said softly, "by fate itself. And you're the face of that betrayal." I closed my eyes. It made a horrible kind of sense. To a powerful alpha like Harry, I wasn't just inadequate. I was an insult. A cosmic joke at his expense, and he would make me pay for it. Every single day, for the rest of our lives. Chapter 3. 3 days passed before Harry summoned me. 3 days in that beautiful prison of a room, with Dessa bringing meals and fresh bandages, with the mate bond pulling at my chest like a fishhook, demanding I find him, be near him, submit to him. I ignored it as best I could. Instead, I explored the room they'd given me and quickly realized it wasn't actually a room at all. It was a suite, with a bedroom, a sitting area, and a private bathroom with a tub large enough to drown in. Everything was decorated in silvers and whites, cold and pristine, like a museum display. There were no personal touches, no books, no art, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. It was a placeholder, a holding cell dressed up as luxury. On the third night, as I was preparing for bed, the door opened without warning. Harry stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights, looking like something carved from stone. He'd changed from his ceremonial clothes into simple dark pants and a fitted shirt that did nothing to hide his warrior's build. His ice blue eyes swept over me, clinical and detached. I was wearing a nightgown. Dessa had left modest, white, utterly shapeless. I felt exposed anyway. "Come with me," he said, not a request. "Where?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Does it matter? You're bound to me. You go where I say, when I say." He turned and walked away, clearly expecting me to follow. The mate bond flared painfully, urging me to obey. But something in me, some stubborn core I'd thought he'd crushed at the ceremony, resisted. "If you're going to order me around like a dog," I called after him, "at least have the decency to tell me where we're going." He stopped, turned. The look on his face was dangerous. "What did you say?" My heart hammered, but I lifted my chin. "I asked where we're going. I think that's a reasonable question." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, unexpectedly, something like dark amusement flickered across his features. "You have a spine after all. I was beginning to think you were just a pretty doll that bleeds." The casual cruelty of it should have hurt. Somehow, it hurt less than his indifference had. "The East Wing," he said finally. "My private chambers, we have matters to discuss." He walked away again, and this time, I followed. The Thornridge pack house was massive, 3 stories of stone and timber that sprawled across the Northern Territory like a fortress. Harry led me through corridors I didn't recognize, past rooms with closed doors and down a staircase that seemed to descend into the earth itself. "These are the old chambers," Harry said, his voice echoing off stone walls. "Built by my great-grandfather when the pack was under constant siege. The entire East Wing is underground." "Why?" I asked, then immediately wondered if I should have stayed silent. "Because sometimes, an alpha needs a place where no one can hear him scream." I didn't know what to make of that. The vulnerable confession felt at odds with everything else about him. We reached a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron. Harry produced a key, actual metal, not the electronic locks used elsewhere in the house, and opened it. The room beyond took my breath away. It was massive, carved entirely from stone, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows. But unlike the cold sterility of my suite, this room was lived in. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, crammed with volumes that looked ancient and well-loved. A desk sat in one corner, covered in papers and maps. A seating area near a massive fireplace held worn leather furniture that looked comfortable rather than decorative. And in the center of the room, oddly out of place, stood a simple wooden chair. "Sit," Harry said, gesturing to it. I approached warily, every instinct screaming this was a trap. But what choice did I have? I sat, folding my hands in my lap, waiting. Harry circled me slowly, predator assessing prey. "Do you know why I brought you here, Tamara?" It was the first time he'd used my name. Something about hearing it from his lips made the mate bond pulse warmly in my chest. "To punish me more?" I guessed. "To decide what to do with you." He stopped in front of me, arms crossed. "The ceremony is complete. You're marked, claimed, bound. But what happens next is entirely up to me." "I'm aware of how pack hierarchy works," I said quietly. "Are you?" He leaned down, bracing his hands on the arms of my chair, caging me in. His face was inches from mine. "Because from where I'm standing, you don't seem to understand your position at all. You talk back, you challenge me, you modified your ceremonial oath." "I accepted the bond," I countered. "That's all that was required." "It's not all I required." His voice dropped to something darker. "You're my mate, Tamara. Mine. That means your body belongs to me. Your time belongs to me. Your very breath belongs to me. And yet you sit here like you have any say in what comes next." The words should have terrified me. Maybe they did. But there was something else underneath the fear, anger, finally breaking through the numbness. "Then what comes next?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "Are you going to kill me? Lock me away? Use me and discard me? Because whatever you're planning, Alpha, just do it. I'm tired of waiting for the next humiliation." Surprise flickered across his face again, then something darker, respect maybe, or curiosity. "You want to know what happens next?" "Yes." He straightened, putting distance between us again. "I'm going to give you a choice. The only choice you'll get in this marriage." I waited, not daring to hope. "Option 1, Harry said, pacing now. "You can live as my mate in name only. I'll set you up in a cottage on the edge of Packlands. You'll have an allowance, servants, everything you need. But you'll never see me, never share my bed, never be truly part of this pack. The bond will exist, but I'll do everything in my power to ignore it." It sounded like mercy. It also sounded like the loneliest existence imaginable. The mate bond would torture us both, demanding closeness we denied it. Option 2, he continued. You stay here. In this house, you fulfill your duties as Luna public appearances, pack events, maintaining the illusion of a proper mating. In private, you belong to me completely. I use you however I see fit. And you obey without question. Both options were prisons, just different kinds. There's a third option, I heard myself say. Harry stopped pacing. Excuse me? You said I get one choice, but you only gave me your choices. What if I want something different? His expression darkened dangerously. You don't get to want Omega. That's not how this works. Then it's not really a choice, is it? I stood, surprising myself with my boldness. It's just you deciding how to torture me, and pretending I had a say in it. The air between us crackled with tension. The mate bond screamed at me to submit, to back down, to accept whatever he offered and be grateful for it. I ignored it. What do you want? Harry asked finally, his voice deceptively soft. I want to earn my place here. The words tumbled out before I could second-guess them. Not as your mate. I know you don't want that. But as something useful. Give me a task, a purpose, something that matters, and if I complete it, you treat me like a person instead of a burden. And if you fail, then you get to choose my prison. Harry studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed a sharp, bitter sound. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both, I admitted. He moved to his desk, rifling through papers, until he found what he was looking for, a small, leather-bound book. He held it up. Do you know what this is? I shook my head. It's a collection of riddles, ancient ones, passed down through my family for generations. Some are simple wordplay, others are complex philosophical puzzles. My grandfather used to test me with them when I was young. He said a true alpha needed a sharp mind as much as sharp claws. I didn't understand where this was going. Harry opened the book, flipped through pages, then closed it again. I'll give you a riddle. One riddle. You have until dawn to solve it. If you do, I'll accept your third option. You stay here, work to prove your worth, and I'll judge you on merit rather than biology. If you fail. He paused. If you fail, you take option 1. The cottage. Exile in all but name. It was a test. Maybe a cruel one, but it was better than either option he'd originally offered. What's the riddle? I asked. Harry's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. What can be given but never bought, broken but never held, kept but never seen? I turned the words over in my mind. Given but never bought. Broken but never held. Kept but never seen. How long do I have? Until dawn. 6 hours. He moved to the door, then paused. There's paper and pen on the desk if you need to work through it. Food and water in the cabinet. But you stay in this room until you have an answer, or the sun rises. Those are the terms. And if I guess wrong, then you guess wrong. He opened the door. I suggest you think carefully, Tamara. You only get one answer. Then, he was gone. The door closing behind him with a hollow thud that echoed in the cavernous room. I was alone with a riddle, and 6 hours to solve it or lose what little ground I'd managed to gain. The first hour, I paced. Given but never bought. What could be given freely but not purchased? Love? No, too obvious, and it didn't fit the rest. Trust? Maybe, but how was trust broken but never held? The second hour, I used the paper, writing out the riddle and underlining keywords. Broken, held, kept, seen. The third hour, I started getting desperate. I tried dozens of answers, promises, secrets, faith, silence. None of them fit all the conditions perfectly. The fourth hour, I almost gave up. Maybe this was just another way for Harry to humiliate me. Maybe there was no right answer, just a test designed for me to fail. But something wouldn't let me quit. Some stubborn part of me that had survived 23 years of being told I was worthless, broken, unwanted. That part whispered, keep thinking, keep trying. You didn't come this far to give up now. The fifth hour, I stopped looking at the riddle as a puzzle to solve and started thinking about why Harry had chosen it. His grandfather used these to test him, to teach him about being an alpha. What would an alpha need to understand about something that could be given but never bought? About something that could be broken but never held? And suddenly, with startling clarity, I knew. I sat down in that wooden chair and waited, my heart hammering, praying I was right. Dawn broke in shades of gray and gold, filtering through narrow windows near the ceiling. The door opened, and Harry entered, looking like he hadn't slept at all. His hair was disheveled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. "Well?" he said. "Do you have an answer?" I stood, meeting his gaze steadily. "A promise." Silence. His expression gave nothing away. "A promise can be given but never bought," I continued, my voice gaining confidence. "It can be broken but never held in your hands. It can be kept but never seen. And," I paused, choosing my next words carefully, "your grandfather was teaching you that an alpha's word matters more than his strength, that promises are the foundation of trust, of pack bonds, of everything that makes a leader worthy of following." More silence, long enough that doubt crept in. Had I gotten it wrong? Misunderstood? Then Harry smiled a real smile, not the cruel approximations he'd shown before. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost boyish. "My grandfather would have liked you," he said softly. Relief washed through me so strongly my knees almost buckled. "So I was right?" "You were right." He moved closer, and this time, there was no menace in his approach. Most people guess love, or secrets, or faith, all of which technically work, but miss the point of why the riddle matters. "And now?" I asked. "What happens now?" Harry's smile faded, replaced by something more complex, not quite warmth, but not the cold contempt from before either. "Now you've earned your third option. You stay, you work, you prove you're more than what I thought you were. And if I fail, then we'll deal with that when it happens." He turned toward the door, then stopped. "Tamara?" "Yes?" "Don't make me regret this." He left me standing in that underground room, alone with the dawn light and the first fragile thread of something that might, eventually, become hope. Chapter 4. Dessa was waiting when I finally emerged from the underground chambers, her eyes wide with surprise and something like relief. "Luna," she breathed. "We thought, that is, when the Alpha took you down there, and you didn't come back all night." She cut herself off, clearly realizing she was overstepping. "I'm fine," I assured her, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. "Actually, I'm better than fine. I need you to tell me something, Dessa. What does the Luna of this pack actually do?" Dessa blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Well, traditionally, the Luna manages the household, oversees the Omega and Beta females, organizes pack events, handles disputes that don't require the Alpha's intervention, maintains relationships with allied packs. When was the last time any of that actually happened here?" I interrupted gently. Her face fell. "Not since Alpha Harry's mother passed. That was 4 years ago. Since then..." She trailed off, but I understood. Since then, the pack had been functioning without a Luna, and apparently no one had stepped up to fill that void. "Show me," I said. "Show me everything that's been neglected." The state of the pack house's domestic affairs was even worse than I'd imagined. Dessa led me through storage rooms filled with moldering linens, a kitchen where the staff clearly had no oversight or organization, record rooms where files from the past 4 years were stacked haphazardly in boxes rather than properly archived. "The Alpha doesn't care about any of this," Dessa explained apologetically. "He manages the warriors, the territory patrols, the political alliances. Everything else just fell apart." I could see it, a pack functioning at half capacity, the warriors and security operating smoothly under Harry's direct command, but the domestic infrastructure crumbling from neglect. It was like a body with a strong skeleton but failing organs. "And no one thought to address this?" I asked. Dessa shifted uncomfortably. "It's not our place, Luna. Pack hierarchy is strict. Without an Alpha's mate to manage these things, the Betas and Omegas can't act without overstepping. We've done what we can, but..." She gestured helplessly at the chaos around us. I understood then what Harry had done. perhaps without even realizing it. By rejecting the idea of a proper Luna, by treating me as a burden rather than a partner, he'd left a vacuum in his pack's structure, and I'd just been handed the opportunity to fill it. Dessa, I said, a plan forming in my mind, gather every beta and omega female in the pack. I want to meet with them this afternoon. And find me the household ledgers from before Luna Thornridge passed. I need to see how things used to run. Dessa's face lit up with something like hope. Yes, Luna, right away. As she hurried off, I caught my reflection in a dusty window. I looked terrible, exhausted, my hair a mess. The bandage on my neck stark white against my pale skin. But my eyes held something they hadn't in days. Purpose. The meeting took place in what had once been the Luna's parlor. A spacious room on the second floor, with large windows overlooking the eastern woods. 15 women assembled there, ranging from teenagers to elderly pack members, all watching me with varying degrees of skepticism and curiosity. I stood before them, acutely aware that I looked nothing like what a Luna should be. No wolf, no strength. Just a broken omega who'd collapsed at her own mating ceremony 3 days ago. I know what you're thinking, I began. Deciding honesty was my only weapon here. You're thinking the alpha got stuck with a defective mate, and now she's going to pretend she can fill his mother's shoes. You're thinking I'm going to fail. Because how could someone like me possibly succeed where a real Luna left off? The room was silent, but I saw agreement in several faces. You're probably right, I continued. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never run a pack household. I don't have a wolf to command respect. All I have is the willingness to try, and the knowledge that this pack deserves better than what it's gotten for the past 4 years. An older woman near the back, she had gray in her hair and scars on her hands, spoke up. With respect, Luna, why should we follow someone who can't even shift? How can you understand pack needs if you're barely pack yourself? It was the question I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. You're right. I can't shift. I can't understand that part of pack life. But I can read, I can organize, I can listen, and I can work harder than anyone else in this room, because I have something to prove that none of you do. What's that? Another woman asked. That I deserve to be here. The scarred woman studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. What do you need from us, Luna? Relief flooded through me. Everything. I need to know what's broken, what's been neglected, what you've been trying to manage without authority to act, and then I need your help fixing it. 4 hours later, I had 17 pages of notes, and a headache that threatened to split my skull. The problems were extensive. The pack's medical supplies were poorly organized and understocked. The kitchen had no meal planning system, so food was constantly wasted. The younger pack members had no structured education or training in anything besides combat. The relations with the 3 allied packs had deteriorated to mere formality, because no one was maintaining those connections. It was overwhelming. It was also exactly what I needed. I was in what I'd claimed as my temporary office, a small room adjacent to the Luna's parlor, when Harry found me that evening. I didn't hear him enter. I only looked up when his shadow fell across my desk. You've been busy, he observed. Scanning the papers spread before me. Your pack house is falling apart, I said bluntly, too tired for diplomacy. The domestic infrastructure has been neglected for years. Your staff is demoralized. Your allied packs probably think you don't care about maintaining relationships. And your medical supplies are so disorganized that if there was an emergency, people could die while someone searches for the right herbs. His jaw tightened. I've been focused on keeping the territory secure. I know. And you've done that well. Dessa says the warrior core is the strongest it's been in decades. But a pack is more than just its fighters, Harry. It's also the people who feed them, house them, heal them, and maintain the bonds that keep everyone loyal. And you think you can fix all that? There was challenge in his voice, but also something else. Curiosity, maybe. I think I can try. I met his gaze. You gave me a chance to prove I'm useful. This is how I'm going to do it. He was quiet for a moment, studying the organized chaos of my notes. My mother used to sit in this room, he said finally, his voice softer. She'd spend hours here, managing everything I'm apparently too blind to notice was falling apart. You weren't blind, you were grieving. The words came out gentler than I'd intended, and no one expected you to be both Alpha and Luna. I'm not grieving anymore, he said, but the tightness around his eyes suggested otherwise. I didn't push. Instead, I asked, will you support what I'm trying to do here? Because I can make lists and plans all day, but if the pack thinks you don't back me, none of it will matter. Harry considered this, and I could see the war playing out behind his ice blue eyes. Supporting me meant acknowledging me as his Luna, truly his mate, not just the burden fate had saddled him with. It meant giving me power in his pack, influence over his people. 1 month, he said finally. Show me real progress in 1 month, and I'll publicly endorse your authority as Luna. Fail, and we revisit our arrangement. It wasn't unconditional support, but it was more than I'd expected. Deal. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Tamara? That riddle last night, why did you think about my grandfather instead of just trying to solve the puzzle? Because you said he used riddles to teach you about being an alpha. So I figured the riddle wasn't just about finding the right answer. It was about understanding why the answer mattered. Something flickered across his face, not quite a smile, but close. You're smarter than you look. I'd have to be, I replied dryly. Looking like this, the bar is pretty low. This time he did smile, brief and unexpected. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my notes and the first fragile sense that maybe, just maybe, I could actually do this. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity that left me exhausted every night and energized every morning. With Dessa as my second in command, and the grudging cooperation of the pack females, I began systematically addressing each problem on my list. We reorganized the medical supplies, creating a system where everything was labeled, inventoried, and easily accessible. I drafted a weekly meal plan for the pack house kitchen and implemented a food tracking system to reduce waste. I established a small school for the younger pack members, nothing elaborate, just basic reading, writing, and mathematics, taught by the older pack members who had those skills. But the project I poured most of my energy into was the library. I discovered it by accident, exploring the upper floors of the pack house, a massive room, easily 40 feet long, with floor-to-ceiling shelves that had once held thousands of volumes. Now it was a disaster, books scattered on tables and floors, shelves collapsed, water damage from a leak no one had bothered to fix. Years of dust and neglect turning what should have been a treasure into a graveyard. Luna Thornridge loved this room. Dessa told me when I asked about it. She spent hours here. After she died, the Alpha had it locked up, I think. I think it hurt too much to see it. I understood that kind of pain, the way losing someone could make even beautiful things feel like weapons. But I also knew that locking away the hurt didn't make it go away. It just let it rot. We're going to restore it, I announced. Luna, that's months of work, Dessa protested. Maybe years. And the Alpha specifically said, I could prove my worth to this pack. A Luna's library isn't just decoration, it's a resource. A place for learning, for records, for preserving pack history. I ran my hand along a damaged shelf. Besides, if Harry wants to stop me, he can. But I'm not asking permission. I'm doing what needs to be done. I assembled a team of 6 pack members, mostly Omegas and a few Betas who were interested in books rather than fighting. We started by carefully sorting through the volumes, assessing damage, cleaning what could be saved, and documenting what was lost. It was painstaking, delicate work that couldn't be rushed. I loved every minute of it. There was something meditative about rescuing these books, about bringing order to chaos. And as we worked, I discovered that the collection was extraordinary, not just novels and poetry, but pack histories, medical texts, philosophical treatises, collections of folklore from across the territories. One book in particular caught my attention, a slim volume bound in worn leather, titled The Language of Riddles. Inside were hundreds of riddles, many with annotations in elegant handwriting that I recognized from other documents as belonging to Harry's grandfather. I spent my evenings reading it, fascinated by how each riddle was both a puzzle and a lesson. Some taught about leadership, others about truth and deception, still others about the nature of promises and bonds. I was so absorbed in one particularly complex riddle about cages and freedom that I didn't notice Harry enter the library until he spoke. "You're supposed to be resting." I looked up, startled. It was well past midnight. I'd lost track of time again. Harry stood in the doorway, partially shifted, his eyes glowing amber, his canines slightly elongated. He must have just come from a perimeter run. "I was resting," I said. "This is restful." He looked around the library, taking in the progress we'd made. Half the room was now organized, clean, functional. The other half was still chaos, but contained chaos with a clear plan for restoration. "You weren't supposed to touch this room," he said, but there was no anger in his voice, just something complicated and raw. "I know. I'm sorry if that was wrong, but it wasn't wrong." He moved deeper into the room, running his hand along a restored shelf, much as I had weeks ago. My mother would have hated seeing it like this. Abandoned. "Tell me about her," I asked quietly. Harry was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, she was strong. Not physically, she was small, like you. But she had this way of making people want to be better. The pack adored her. My father adored her. When she got sick..." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "It was fast, a rare blood disease. She was fine one day, gone 3 months later. And my father, he never recovered. He died 6 months after she did. The healers said his heart just gave out. But I knew better. He died of grief." "I'm sorry," I said, inadequate words for such profound loss. "That's why I asked for a strong mate," Harry continued, his voice rough. "Someone who wouldn't break, who wouldn't die and leave me like she left him. Someone who could survive being bound to an alpha, who could give me heirs that would live. And instead, I got a wolfless omega who collapsed at her own mating ceremony." I finished softly. "Someone fragile," he said. "Someone who's going to die and leave me just like my mother left my father." The fear beneath his cruelty suddenly made terrible sense. He hadn't been punishing me for being weak. He'd been punishing me for the inevitability of loss, for being a reminder that strong bonds meant devastating grief. "I'm not your mother," I said quietly. "And I'm not going to promise I'll never die, because that would be a lie. But I'm stronger than I look, Harry. You of all people should know that by now." He finally looked at me directly, and in his amber-lit eyes I saw something I'd never seen before: uncertainty, vulnerability, fear. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked. "The household management, the library, all of it. You could have just existed, taken the easy exile. Why work this hard for a pack that doesn't want you, and a mate who's made it clear you're a burden?" I thought about that riddle I'd solved weeks ago, about promises and what they meant. "Because I made a promise," I said simply. "When I accepted your claim at the ceremony, when I said what I am, I remain. I promised to try, to be more than what you think I am. And I keep my promises, Alpha. Even when they cost me everything." Something shifted in Harry's expression. The amber faded from his eyes, his canines receding as he fully returned to human form. He studied me like he was seeing me for the first time. "The month is almost up," he said finally. "I know. You've done more than I expected, more than I thought possible." He paused. "Tomorrow night, there's a gathering with the allied pack alphas. Diplomatic dinner. You'll attend as my Luna." Officially. My heart skipped. That means I'm publicly acknowledging you, supporting your authority in this pack. It means..." He hesitated, something like regret crossing his face. "It means I may have been wrong about you, Tamara Rollins." "Thornridge," I corrected gently. "Tamara Thornridge. I'm your mate, remember? For better or worse." "Mostly worse so far," he said, but there was the ghost of a smile in his voice. "Well," I replied, closing the riddle book carefully, "we've got time to change that. After all, we're bound until death parts us. That's a long time to work on better." Harry didn't respond, but as he left the library, I could have sworn the mate bond felt different. Less like a chain pulling me toward him, and more like a thread, connecting two people who might, eventually, choose to stand closer together. Chapter 5. The Gathering of Wolves. The dress Dessa laid out for me was nothing like the white ceremonial gown I'd worn 3 weeks ago. This one was deep midnight blue, almost black, with silver embroidery along the bodice that caught the light like stars. It was elegant, sophisticated, and designed to make a statement. The Alpha had it commissioned, Dessa said, her voice carefully neutral. He sent your measurements to the pack seamstress last week. Before he'd decided to publicly acknowledge me, which meant Harry had been planning this, had been watching my progress and considering whether I'd earned this moment. The thought made something warm unfurl in my chest, quickly followed by anxiety. Tonight wasn't just about me, it was about representing the Thornridge pack to 3 allied alphas and their mates. One mistake, one sign of weakness, and I could undermine everything Harry had built. What are they like? I asked Dessa as she helped me into the dress. The allied alphas? Alpha Rowan of the Western Pack is intense, very traditional. His mate, Luna Iris, is lovely but quiet. Alpha Darius of the Southern Pack is political, everything is a negotiation with him. His mate passed away years ago, so he'll come alone. And Alpha Silas of the Eastern Pack is young, barely 30, but sharp as a blade. His mate, Luna Vera, is apparently quite formidable. 3 alphas, 2 Lunas, all of whom would be judging whether Harry's wolfless mate was an asset or a liability. No pressure, I muttered. Dessa smiled sympathetically as she worked on my hair, weaving it into an intricate updo that made me look older, more refined. You'll do fine, Luna. You've handled everything else that's been thrown at you. Everything else didn't involve politics and diplomacy with wolves who could snap me in half. True, Dessa agreed cheerfully. But you also didn't collapse this time when faced with a challenge, so that's progress. I couldn't help but laugh, even though my hands were shaking. She was right. 3 weeks ago, I'd been the broken Omega who fainted at her own ceremony. Now I was the Luna who'd reorganized a household, restored a library, and earned however tentatively her mate's respect. I could do this. Harry was waiting at the bottom of the grand staircase, dressed in formal black with silver accents that matched my dress. When he looked up and saw me descending, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. The mate bond hummed between us, stronger than it had been even that morning. You look. He paused, seeming to search for words. Appropriate. I raised an eyebrow. Appropriate? That's the best you can do? Would you prefer I lie and say you look beautiful? I'd prefer you not say anything at all if that's your idea of a compliment. I reached to the bottom step, and he offered his arm. I took it, acutely aware of the heat of him through the fabric of his jacket. You look like a Luna, he said quietly as we walked toward the formal dining room. That's not a small thing. It was possibly the kindest thing he'd ever said to me. I didn't trust myself to respond without my voice shaking, so I just nodded. The dining room had been transformed. The long table gleamed with polish, set with fine china and crystal that must have been locked away for years. Candles cast warm light over everything, and the smell of roasted meat and herbs filled the air. My weeks of working with the kitchen staff had paid off. This meal would showcase the Thornridge Pack's hospitality. Remember, Harry murmured as we heard voices approaching. You speak for this pack tonight as much as I do. They'll test you. Stand firm. Then the doors opened, and the allied alphas arrived. Alpha Rowan entered first, a massive man in his 50s with a gray-streaked beard and eyes that assessed everything. His mate, Iris, was indeed lovely, petite and blonde, with a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her watchful eyes. Harry, Rowan's voice boomed. Good to see you. And this must be your new mate. The infamous Tamara. Infamous. That didn't bode well. Luna Tamara, Harry corrected, his tone mild but firm. Yes, Tamara. May I present Alpha Rowan and Luna Iris of the Western Pack. I extended my hand to Iris first, a calculated move acknowledging the Luna before the Alpha showed respect for pack hierarchy. Iris's smile became genuine as she took my hand. Luna, Tamara. What a beautiful home you keep. Thank you, Luna Iris, though I confess I'm still learning. Your own territory is renowned for its organization. A compliment that acknowledged her expertise while showing I'd done my research. Iris's eyes warmed further. Rowan, meanwhile, was studying me with undisguised curiosity. Heard you can't shift. That true? Rowan, Iris said, a warning in her voice. It's all right, I said calmly. Yes, Alpha Rowan, it's true. I'm wolfless. Has been since birth, but I find I can contribute to this pack in other ways. I gestured to the dining room. For instance, I doubt a wolf could have restored this room to its former glory. Paws aren't particularly good with fine china. A beat of silence. Then Rowan laughed, a genuine belly laugh that shook his frame. She's got spirit, Harry. I'll give you that. Alpha Darius arrived next, lean and silver-haired, with calculating eyes that missed nothing. He greeted Harry formally, then turned to me. Luna Tamara. I've heard interesting things about you. I hope some of them are true, I replied. We'll see. He moved to take his seat, and I couldn't tell if I'd passed some test or failed it. The last to arrive was Alpha Silas and Luna Vera. Silas was indeed young, with dark hair and intense green eyes that held fierce intelligence. But it was Vera who took my breath away. She was stunning, with auburn hair and a presence that commanded attention. She was also, unmistakably, heavily pregnant. Forgive our tardiness, Vera said warmly, one hand resting on her swollen belly. Someone has decided that punctuality is overrated. Congratulations, I said sincerely. When are you due? 6 weeks, if this little one cooperates. She moved to greet me properly, and I noticed how Silas stayed close, protective but not overbearing. I've been eager to meet you, Luna Tamara. Silas says you've been making quite an impression. He has? I glanced at Harry, who looked equally surprised. News travels, Silas said with a slight smile. Especially news about an unmated alpha suddenly claiming his fated mate, and said mate proceeding to revolutionize his pack's domestic operations within 3 weeks. I wouldn't say revolutionize. She's being modest, Harry interrupted, his hand moving to rest on my lower back, a possessive gesture that made the mate bond sing. Tamara has accomplished in 3 weeks what I failed to address in 4 years. The pride in his voice was unexpected. So was the way it made my heart race. Dinner was a careful dance of politics and personality. I sat at Harry's right hand, with Vera on my other side. The men dominated the conversation at first: territory disputes, rogue sightings, trade agreements. While Iris, Vera, and I maintained our own quieter dialogue. How are you finding Luna duties? Vera asked. I remember my first months were overwhelming. That's an understatement, I admitted. I keep discovering new things that need attention. Yesterday I found out the pack hasn't sent proper solstice gifts to the allied packs in 3 years. Iris winced. We noticed. Rowan was displeased. I'm fixing it, I assured her. In fact, I wanted to ask your advice on appropriate gifts. I don't want to insult anyone by being too presumptuous. We fell into easy conversation about pack diplomacy, and I realized this was another test, but one I was better equipped for than I'd thought. These weren't just Alpha's mates. They were political partners in their own right, managing relationships and alliances that kept the peace between territories. You're good at this, Vera said quietly. So only I could hear. The politics. Most new Lunas struggle with it for months. I've had practice being invisible, I replied. You learn to read people when you can't rely on strength to command respect. Vera's eyes softened with understanding. Can I ask you something personal? I nodded. The mark on your neck. That scarring, that's not a typical mate bond mark. My hand instinctively went to my throat, where the bandage had finally come off 2 days ago. The scar was raised, angry red, impossible to hide. I'd tried covering it with high collars, but nothing really concealed it. No, I said quietly. It's not. Silas would kill anyone who marked me like that, Vera said matter-of-factly. Even at our ceremony, when the bond was new and overwhelming, he was gentle, reverent. That's what a mate's mark should be. I didn't know what to say. The truth that Harry had marked me viciously to punish me for existing wasn't something I could admit at a diplomatic dinner. Things were complicated at our ceremony, I finally said. But they're better now. Vera studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Because you deserve better, Luna Tamara. Remember that. The conversation at the men's end of the table had grown more intense. I caught fragments. Something about rogue wolves gathering near the border. Concerns about human expansion into pack territories. Not sustainable, Darius was saying. We need a unified response, not each pack handling it independently. And who decides this unified response? Rowan challenged. Your pack? Mine? We're allies, not a federation. Maybe we should be, Silas interjected. The world is changing. Humans have technology now that can track us, document us. Staying isolated and territorial is increasingly dangerous. That's progressive talk from a young alpha, Rowan said, not unkindly. But our ways have kept us safe for centuries. Our ways are failing, Harry said suddenly, his voice cutting through the debate. Rowan, your southern border has had 3 rogue incursions this year. Darius, you've lost 2 wolves to human hunters. Silas is right, we need to adapt. The table fell silent. I could feel the tension crackling between the alphas, each one weighing whether to support or challenge Harry's statement. Then I heard myself speak. What if you formed a council? Every eye turned to me. I felt heat creep up my neck, but forced myself to continue. Not a federation that removes individual pack autonomy, but a formal council where the 4 allied packs coordinate on shared threats. You meet quarterly, share intelligence, establish unified protocols for handling rogues and human encounters. Each alpha maintains control of their territory, but you have a framework for cooperation. That's... Darius leaned forward, interested. Actually, not a bad idea. It's how my father's pack handled things with their allies, I continued, gaining confidence. Not perfectly, but it prevented a lot of conflicts that might have escalated otherwise. The Western Pack already has a Luna Council for domestic matters, Iris added. This would be the military equivalent. An Alpha Council, Silas mused. With clear parameters and limited scope, it could work. Rowan stroked his beard, considering. We'd need rules, boundaries. I won't cede my pack's sovereignty. No one's asking you to, Harry said. Just to coordinate when coordination makes sense. I watched the 4 alphas begin sketching out possibilities, their earlier tension transforming into productive discussion. Vera caught my eye and winked. Iris smiled approvingly. I'd done it. I'd contributed something meaningful to pack politics. The mate bond pulsed warm in my chest, and when I glanced at Harry, he was looking at me with something I'd never seen before. Genuine respect. The gathering ended near midnight. The alphas agreed to reconvene in 2 weeks to formalize the council structure. Goodbyes were warm, and several times I heard variations of, "Your Luna is impressive, Harry," that made my face heat with pleasure. When the last guest had departed and the staff had cleared the dining room, Harry and I stood alone in the suddenly quiet space. "You surprised me tonight," he said. "In a good way, I hope." "In a very good way." He moved closer, and for once there was no coldness in his expression. "That council idea, where did that come from?" "Your library," I admitted. "There are treaty documents from decades ago that outline similar arrangements. I've been reading them while restoring the collection." "Of course you have." Something like fondness crept into his voice. "You're always reading. Always thinking. I don't think I've ever seen you idle." "I don't have the luxury of being idle," I said quietly. "I have to work twice as hard to be seen as half as valuable." Harry's expression darkened. "Is that how you see yourself? Half as valuable?" "It's how everyone else sees me, including you, until recently." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I was wrong." "About?" He reached up, his fingers hovering near the scar on my neck but not quite touching. "About what I did to you at the ceremony." My breath caught. Was this an apology? From Harry? "I was angry," he continued, his voice rough. "At fate. At the moon goddess. At the situation. And I took it out on you. The marking it should never have been like that. You didn't deserve that cruelty." "No," I agreed softly. "I didn't. I can't undo it. The scar will remain, but I can." He struggled for words. "I can try to be different going forward, if you'll let me." It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't a declaration of love or acceptance, but it was real, and honest, and more than I'd ever expected from him. "I'd like that," I said. The mate bond thrummed between us, stronger than ever. And for the first time since our ceremony, Harry leaned down and pressed his lips to my forehead. Not a kiss exactly, but a gesture of tenderness that made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Come on," he said, pulling back. "It's late, you've earned rest." He walked me to my suite, not his chambers, I noticed, but my own separate space. We weren't there yet. Maybe we never would be. But this was progress, and progress was enough. "Harry?" I called as he turned to leave. "Yes, thank you. For tonight. For trusting me with something that mattered." He studied me for a moment, backlit by the hallway lights. "Thank you for proving you were worth that trust, Tamara." Then he was gone, and I was alone with the memory of his lips on my forehead and the growing hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build something real from the broken pieces of our forced bond. Chapter 6. The Truth Behind the Beast. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my windows and an unusual sense of peace. Last night had been a triumph not just politically, but personally. For the first time since the ceremony, I felt like maybe Harry and I could actually work. That feeling lasted exactly until Dessa knocked on my door, her face pale with distress. "Luna, I'm so sorry to disturb you, but you need to come to the library. Now." My stomach dropped. "What happened? Just, please come." I threw on a robe and followed her through the corridors, my heart hammering. Had something been destroyed? Had someone undone all our restoration work? But when I reached the library, I found it intact. What I also found was Harry standing in the center of the room, holding the slim leather volume I'd been reading, The Language of Riddles, with an expression that could only be described as devastated. "Harry?" I approached cautiously. "What's wrong?" He looked up at me, and his ice blue eyes were hollow. "How long have you been reading this?" "A few weeks." "Why? Did you read the inscription?" He opened the front cover, and I saw handwriting I'd never noticed before, elegant script that had faded with age. I moved closer, reading aloud. "To my grandson Harry, may these riddles teach you what I cannot say. That the strongest bonds are built on promises freely given, not commands forcibly taken. With love, Grandfather Thornridge." "I never knew this was here," Harry said, his voice raw. "My grandfather died when I was 15. This book disappeared after his death. My father said it was lost, but he didn't lose it, he hid it." "Why would he hide it?" Harry's laugh was bitter. "Because my grandfather's views on mate bonds were progressive, controversial. He believed alphas shouldn't command their omegas but partner with them. He thought the traditional hierarchy was toxic, that true strength came from mutual respect, not dominance." He flipped through pages, stopping at a riddle I'd marked with a ribbon. "This one, do you remember it?" I read. "What kind of cage is opened by its captive's choice?" "The answer is a bond," Harry said. "A mate bond. My grandfather believed that bonds shouldn't be cages at all, that if your mate wanted to stay with you, they should choose it freely, every day. Not because the moon goddess commanded it, but because you'd earned that choice." Gangsier. Understanding dawned slowly, horribly. "And your father disagreed." "My father believed in the old ways. Absolute alpha authority. Omegas existed to serve, to obey, to submit. When my mother got sick, Harry's jaw tightened. He commanded her to get better, as if her body would obey him like the pack did. When she died anyway, I think it broke something in him. He couldn't accept that there were things even an alpha couldn't control. He set the book down carefully, like it might shatter. That's why he hid this book. Because my grandfather's philosophy was the opposite of everything he believed, and I grew up with his version, not my grandfather's." "Harry, that night, in the underground chambers," he continued, "when I gave you the riddle about promises, I didn't fully understand what I was testing. I thought I was testing your intelligence, but my grandfather was testing something else. He was asking, do you understand that true bonds are built on choices, not commands?" The weight of it hung between us. And I answered correctly. "You did, and I had no idea what that really meant." He moved to the window, staring out at the eastern woods. When I asked the moon goddess for a strong mate, I thought I meant physically strong. A warrior, someone who could survive being bound to an alpha, who could give me strong heirs. But that's not what my grandfather would have asked for. What would he have asked for? Someone strong enough to stay by choice. Someone who could look at an alpha who'd been nothing but cruel and still choose to try. Someone who could take a broken bond and build something worth keeping from it. He turned back to me. He would have asked for you, Tamara. My throat tightened with emotion I couldn't name. I don't understand. The moon goddess didn't give me what I asked for. She gave me what I needed. Harry crossed back to me, and his expression was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. My father taught me that power comes from dominance, that love is possession, that mates should be grateful for the privilege of being claimed. But you've shown me something different. What's that? That real strength isn't about forcing submission. It's about earning trust, about giving someone every reason to leave and having them stay anyway. He reached up, and this time his fingers did touch the scar on my neck. I marked you like you were property, like you were mine to use and discard. And you should have left. Should have begged for that cottage on the edge of Packlands. Far away from me. But I didn't. I said softly. But you didn't, he echoed. You stayed. You worked. You proved that what I thought was weakness was actually the strongest thing in this whole damned pack, and I was too blind to see it. The mate bond was singing now, fully alive, connecting us in ways that went beyond physical proximity. I could feel his remorse, his shame, his desperate hope that maybe it wasn't too late to fix what he'd broken. Harry, I said carefully. Why are you telling me this now? He dropped his hand from my neck. Because last night, watching you with the other Lunas, seeing how naturally you handled pack politics, I realized something. You're exactly what this pack needs. What I need. But I've given you no reason to want to stay beyond obligation and survival. That's not entirely true, isn't it? He challenged. Be honest, Tamara. If the mate bond disappeared tomorrow, if you were free to go anywhere, do anything, would you stay? It was the question I'd been avoiding asking myself for 3 weeks. The honest answer was complicated. I don't know, I admitted. A month ago, absolutely not. Now, I've built something here. Connections with the pack members, a purpose, work that matters. But staying for the pack isn't the same as staying for you. I know. The vulnerability in his voice was painful to hear. And I don't expect you to want to stay for me. Not after everything. But I need you to know that I'm going to try. To be different. To be the mate my grandfather would have been proud of, not the one my father taught me to be. That's a pretty big promise, I said. Yes, he agreed. It is. We stood there in the morning light, the library quiet around us. Years of pack history watching our fragile attempt at something new. I'm scared, I finally admitted, of trusting you, of believing this could be real. You've hurt me, Harry, deliberately, and I don't know if I can just let that go. I'm not asking you to let it go. I'm asking you to let me earn your forgiveness. He took a step back, giving me space. No commands, no alpha pressure, just a request. Give me time to prove I can be better. It would be so easy to say no. To protect myself by keeping the walls up. By accepting the minimum and expecting nothing more. But I thought about my grandfather's riddle. About cages that opened by the captive's choice. About promises that could be given but never bought. Okay, I said. But on one condition. Name it. You stop hiding. From me, from the pack, from whoever you really are beneath all this alpha posturing. Because I don't want the version of you that your father taught you to be. I want. I hesitated, then decided honesty was worth the risk. I want the version that your grandfather believed in. The one who understands that bonds are choices, not chains. Something shifted in Harry's expression, hope, maybe, or relief. I don't know if I know how to be that person. Then we'll figure it out together, I said. Because honestly, I don't know how to be a proper Luna either. We're both just making this up as we go. For the first time since I'd known him, Harry laughed a real laugh, warm and genuine. We're a mess, aren't we? The worst, I agreed, smiling despite myself. He reached out hesitantly, offering his hand. Not grabbing, not demanding, offering. I looked at it for a long moment, then placed my hand in his. The mate bond hummed contentedly at the contact, but more than that, something in my chest eased. This was a beginning. Not a happily ever after, not a magical fix for everything broken between us, just a beginning. I need to tell you something else, Harry said, still holding my hand. About why I'm really underground in those chambers so often. My stomach tightened. Okay, you assumed they were just my private space, and they are, but they're also. He hesitated. Come with me. I'll show you. He led me through the pack house, and down the familiar staircase, to the underground chambers. But this time, instead of stopping at the main room, he took me deeper through a hidden door I'd never noticed, down another set of stairs, into a passage carved from raw stone. Harry, where are we going? Somewhere no one else in the pack knows about, not even my beta. The passage opened into a massive cavern, easily 50 feet across, and in the center, secured with chains that looked ancient and unbreakable, was a cage. A very, very large cage. What is this? I breathed. Harry's voice was tight. This is where I come 3 nights every month. During the full moon, understanding hit me like a physical blow. You can't control your shift. Worse, I shift whether I want to or not, and when I do. He moved closer to the cage, running his hand along the bars. I'm not myself. I'm violent, unpredictable, dangerous. My grandfather had the same condition, inherited weakness in some alpha bloodlines. He built this cage for himself and taught my father how to use it. When my father died and I inherited the alpha position, I inherited this too. Does anyone know? My father knew. He died before I had to use it much. After that, I learned to manage alone. Lock myself in, shift, rage until dawn, shift back when it's safe. His voice dropped. The pack thinks their alpha is strong, in control. They don't know he's a monster who has to cage himself 3 nights a month. The pieces were falling into place. His obsession with strength, his rejection of me as weak, his fear that I wouldn't survive being bound to him. That's why you wanted a warrior mate, I said slowly. Not just to give you strong heirs, but someone who could survive if you ever lost control around them. Yes. He turned to face me. And instead I got someone without a wolf, someone fragile, someone who'd be completely defenseless if I ever. He couldn't finish the sentence. I moved closer to the cage, studying it. The bars were reinforced with silver, painful to shifters but not fatal. The lock was complex, designed to be secured from outside and impossible to open from within. How long have you been doing this alone? 4 years. Since my father died. 4 years of locking himself in this cage every full moon. 4 years of facing his worst self with no one to help. No one to stand guard. No one to reassure him when dawn came that he was still himself. The next full moon is in 2 weeks, I said. I know. Then that's when I'll come with you. His head snapped up. Absolutely not. Tamara, you can't. I can, and I will. I met his gaze steadily. You just asked me to give you a chance to prove you can be better. Well, I'm asking you to let me help, to trust me enough to not face this alone anymore. It's too dangerous. If something went wrong, if I got out somehow, then I'll figure it out. I'm smarter than I look, remember? I moved closer to him, placing my hand over his heart. You've been carrying this alone for 4 years. Let me share it. Let me be your mate, not just your burden. You're not a burden, he said roughly. You've never been a burden. I just couldn't see it. Then let me prove it. Let me stay with you during the full moon. I won't get too close to the cage. I'll follow whatever safety protocols you've established. But I'll be there, so you don't have to face the monster alone. Harry's hand came up to cover mine, pressing it against his chest where I could feel his heart hammering. You're terrifying, you know that? Absolutely fearless. I'm terrified, I corrected. But I'm staying anyway. That's what promises mean, Harry. Staying even when it's hard. He pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me carefully, like he was afraid I might break. His face buried in my hair, and I felt him shudder with something like relief. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Probably not, I agreed. But you're stuck with me anyway. That's what fated mates means. We stood there in that underground cavern, holding each other, while the mate bond wove tighter between us. Not fixed yet, we were still too broken for that. But healing. Slowly. One honest moment at a time. 2 weeks, Harry said finally. And then we'll see if you still think this is a good idea. 2 weeks, I agreed. As he led me back up to the world above, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. That the full moon wasn't just a test of whether I could handle Harry's beast. It was a test of whether we could really build something worth keeping from the ruins of our forced bond. I'd solved his riddle about promises. Now I had to prove I could keep the ones I was making, even if it cost me everything. Chapter 7. The Night of Becoming. The 2 weeks passed in a strange liminal space between our old dynamic and something new, undefined. Harry didn't exactly soften, he was still the alpha. Still commanded respect and obedience from his pack, but with me, he was different. Careful. Almost tentative. He started joining me in the library in the evenings, sitting in comfortable silence while I catalogued books and he worked through pack correspondence. Sometimes he'd read passages from his grandfather's riddle book aloud, asking my interpretation. Other times, we'd talk about pack matters, and he'd actually listen to my suggestions without the defensive hostility that had characterized our early interactions. The pack noticed. I heard whispers, some approving, others skeptical. The unmated females who'd hoped Harry would reject me and choose one of them, watched with barely concealed resentment. But most of the pack seemed cautiously optimistic that their alpha had finally accepted his mate. If only they knew the truth was far more complicated. 3 days before the full moon, Harry took me back down to the underground cavern to explain the protocols. The shift starts at moonrise, he said, demonstrating the cage's locking mechanism. I'll enter before that, secure myself from inside using this secondary lock. You'll engage the primary lock from outside here. He showed me the complex system of bolts and bars. Once I'm secured, you stay at least 15 feet from the cage, no matter what I say or do. What do you mean, what you say or do? His expression darkened. When I shift during the full moon, I'm not entirely human and not entirely wolf. I'm something in between, more aware than a regular shifted wolf, but less in control than my human form. I might recognize you. I might say things. What kind of things? Things designed to make you come closer. The beast is cunning, Tamara. It will use my voice, my memories, anything it can to manipulate you. You have to ignore it all. A chill ran down my spine. Has it ever worked? Has anyone ever been fooled? My father was, once. My mother came down during a full moon when I was 17. She thought she could comfort me. I nearly killed her. His voice was hollow with remembered horror. My father got her out just in time, but after that, no one came down here. He'd lock me in and leave. Said it was safer that way. That's why you've been alone all these years. It's why everyone should stay away. Why you should stay away. He gripped the bars of the cage. I'm giving you one more chance to back out. No judgment, no consequences. Just, please consider being smart about this. I studied him, this powerful alpha who was terrified not of the monster he became, but of what that monster might do to me. The vulnerability in his request was almost painful to witness. I'm staying, I said firmly, but I'll follow every protocol. I promise. He closed his eyes briefly, and I couldn't tell if his expression was relief or resignation. Maybe both. The day of the full moon arrived with perfect, cloudless skies, the kind of evening that mocked the darkness to come. I spent the afternoon preparing, following Harry's instructions to the letter. I dressed in clothes I could move quickly in, pulled my hair back securely, made sure I had water and provisions since the vigil would last until dawn. Dessa tried to stop me at the door to my suite. Luna, please reconsider. The Alpha has managed this alone for years. You don't need to. He shouldn't have to manage it alone, I interrupted gently. I'm his mate. This is part of what that means. But you're... She stopped herself, but I knew what she'd been about to say. Weak? Wolfless? Defenseless? I finished for her. Yes, to all of the above. But I'm also stubborn, and I made a promise. Those things matter more. I left before she could argue further. Harry was already in the underground chamber when I arrived, pacing like a caged animal before he actually became one. The cavern was lit with oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across the stone walls, making everything feel more ancient, more primal. "You came," he said, and I couldn't tell if he was relieved or disappointed. I said I would. Saying and doing are different things. He checked the position of the lamps all outside the 15-foot safety zone. "The moon will rise in 20 minutes. I need to be secured before then." I watched as he entered the cage, the heavy door closing behind him with a clang that echoed in the cavern. He worked the internal locks, his movements practiced from years of solitary ritual. When he was done, he nodded to me. I approached, staying outside the safety zone, and engaged the primary lock. The mechanism was heavy, requiring both hands and significant effort to fully secure. When it finally clicked into place, Harry tested it from inside, pulling hard on the door. It held. "Good," he said. "Now go to the observation point there, against the far wall. You'll be able to see everything, but you'll be safely out of range." I moved to the indicated spot, a natural alcove in the stone that felt almost like a throne carved for watching. Harry had placed a chair there, along with a small table holding water, bread, and a thick blanket. He'd thought of my comfort even in this. "Harry?" I called across the distance. "Yes." "Thank you for trusting me with this." His laugh was bitter. "Thank me when it's over. You might change your mind about wanting to be here." Then the moonrise began. I'd witnessed shifts before. Every pack gathering included wolves changing form, usually with practiced ease. It was supposed to be natural, fluid, a transformation as easy as breathing. What happened to Harry was nothing like that. It started with him doubling over, a cry of pain escaping his lips that echoed off the stone walls. His body convulsed, muscles spasming beneath his skin. Where normal shifts took seconds, his seemed to drag on in agonized slow motion. I gripped the arms of my chair, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to run to him, to help somehow. But I'd promised to follow the protocols. His bones cracked audibly as they reformed. His skin rippled and split, dark fur erupting in patches. But it wasn't complete. Some parts shifted fully while others remained stubbornly human. His face elongated into a muzzle, but his eyes stayed ice blue and horribly aware. His hands became claws, but his posture remained partially upright. It was like watching someone trapped between two forms, unable to complete the transformation to either. When it was finally over, the thing in the cage was neither man nor wolf. It was something else, a chimera that shouldn't exist, standing on two legs but hunched, covered in dark fur but with patches of human skin still visible, powerful and graceful but wrong, in ways that made my hindbrain scream danger. The creature lifted its head, and those ice-blue eyes fixed directly on me. "Tamara." The voice was Harry's but distorted, roughened by the changed shape of his throat. "Tamara, it hurts. Please, come closer." I pressed myself back against the stone wall, my heart hammering. This was what he'd warned me about. "I can't do that," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You know I can't." The shift went wrong. The creature moved closer to the bars, and I saw how powerful it was, easily 7 feet tall, muscles coiled with predatory strength. "Something's different. I think the lock is damaged. Tamara, you need to check it." "The lock is fine," I said firmly. "I'm not coming closer." It tilted its head, studying me with unnerving intelligence. Then its approach changed, the desperation fading, replaced by something calculated. "Smart little Omega. Harry said you were smart." "Harry is smart too, smart enough to warn me about you." "About me?" A horrible approximation of a smile. "I am Harry. Just the part he keeps caged. The part he's afraid of. The part that wants to hurt me," I said. "No." It sat down, movements eerily graceful. "The part that wants you, period. Without all the human guilt and fear and self-hatred. The part that knows you're ours and should be closer." The mate bond pulsed at those words, recognizing truth in them. This thing might be Harry's beast, but it was still bound to me, still felt the pull of our connection. If you really wanted me closer, you'd stay in control. You'd earn my trust instead of trying to manipulate it. The creature laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You're different from what I expected. When Harry first saw you, all he felt was disappointment and rage. But now, it leaned against the bars, staring at me intently. Now he thinks about you constantly. Wonders if you'll stay. Hopes you will. Even though he's terrified of what that means. Stop, I said, my voice shaking. I know what you're doing. Using his memories, his feelings, to make me think this is really him talking. It is him. Just the parts he won't say out loud. The beast's voice softened. He thinks you're beautiful. Noticed it the night of that ridiculous diplomatic dinner. How the dress made your eyes look like storm clouds. He wanted to tell you but couldn't figure out how without sounding insincere. My breath caught. That was too specific, too intimate to be manipulation, wasn't it? He regrets the marking every time he sees the scar. The beast continued. Wishes he could go back and be gentle. Wishes he could have been the mate you deserved from the beginning. Stop, I whispered. He's falling in love with you, Tamara. Terrified of it, fighting it, but falling anyway. And he's convinced you'll leave the moment you realize what a monster he really is, what we really are. Tears burned in my eyes. If you're really part of him, if you really care about him at all, then you'll stop trying to hurt me, because hurting me hurts him. The beast went very still. Then, slowly, it moved away from the bars, retreating to the far side of the cage. It curled up there, that horrible in-between form tucking in on itself. And when it spoke again, its voice was quieter. You're right. I'm sorry. We stayed like that for hours, me in my alcove, the beast in its cage, the oil lamps burning steadily between us. Sometimes it would pace, restless energy coiling through its movements. Sometimes it would speak. Words that were part Harry and part something else entirely. Observations about the pack or memories from his childhood or thoughts about the future. I learned that Harry's mother used to sing while she worked in her garden. That his grandfather taught him to read using the riddle book, one puzzle at a time. That his father never recovered from losing his mate, became cruel in his grief. Taught his son that love was weakness and control was strength. I learned that Harry dreamed sometimes of being normal, just an alpha, with a simple shift, without this monthly curse that made him feel like an abomination. And I learned that the beast wasn't separate from Harry at all. It was just the part of him that couldn't lie, couldn't hide behind protocol and propriety and the armor he wore to protect himself. He's afraid you'll reject him, the beast said as the night wore on toward dawn. When you truly see all of him, the cruelty, the curse, the damage his father left, he's convinced you'll realize you deserve better. Does he really think that little of me? I asked. That I'd run at the first real challenge? He thinks that little of himself. The beast's eyes glowed in the lamplight. He's been told his whole life that his worth is in his strength, his control, his ability to dominate. And then he meets someone who sees value in completely different things. Intelligence, kindness, persistence. And he doesn't know how to process that. Doesn't know if he can be what you need. What I need, I said softly, is honesty, effort. Someone who's willing to keep trying even when it's hard. I don't need perfection. I've never been perfect myself. You're perfect for him, the beast said simply. Even if he's too stupid to fully realize it yet. Despite everything, the fear, the strangeness, the monster in the cage, I laughed. Did you just call your human half stupid? If the assessment fits. There was amusement in its voice now. He spent weeks treating you like you were worthless when you were exactly what he needed all along. That's pretty stupid. Maybe we're both stupid, I offered. I stayed with someone who hurt me, kept trying to prove myself to someone who already decided I was inadequate. You stayed because you're strong, because you know that real bonds take work. The beast moved closer to the bars again, but this time there was no menace in the approach. You stayed because you keep your promises, and that's why he's falling for you, Tamara. Not despite your weaknesses, but because of your strengths. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten, not dawn yet, but its herald. The beast looked toward the small windows high in the cavern walls, tracking the changing light. It's almost over, it said. When the moon sets, I'll shift back. He won't remember most of this. Won't remember what I told you. Should I tell him? That's up to you. But know this, everything I said tonight was true. The beast can't lie, Tamara. It's not in our nature. We're too primal for deception. As the first rays of true dawn filtered into the cavern, the creature began to convulse again. This time, the shift was faster, the body collapsing in on itself as fur receded and bones reformed into fully human shape. When it was over, Harry lay naked and gasping on the cage floor, completely human once more. Tamara? His voice was hoarse but his own. Are you still there? I'm here, I called back. I'm okay, thank God. He pushed himself up to sitting, and even across the distance I could see he was trembling with exhaustion. Unlock the cage. Please. I need out. I approached carefully, engaging the release mechanism. The door swung open, and Harry stumbled out, nearly falling. I caught him, or tried to. He was far too large for me to actually support, but he leaned on me anyway. You stayed, he said wonderingly, looking down at me with something like awe. The whole night. You actually stayed. I told you I would. I know, but I thought. He trailed off, then pulled me into a fierce embrace. Thank you. Thank you for not leaving, for not being afraid. I almost laughed against his chest. I was terrified, but you stayed anyway. He pulled back enough to look at my face, his hands framing my cheeks. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Tamara Thornridge. Do you know that? Before I could respond, he kissed me. Not the vicious claiming of the mating ceremony, not a perfunctory duty kiss. This was soft, tentative, asking rather than demanding. His lips moved against mine with a gentleness I hadn't known he possessed, and the mate bond sang with rightness, with finally, with this. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I'm falling in love with you, Harry said, the words tumbling out like he couldn't contain them. I don't know when it started, maybe that first night with the riddle. Maybe when you stood up to those alphas at dinner. Maybe just watching you restore my mother's library piece by piece. But I am, and it terrifies me, because I'm still learning how to be the mate you deserve, and I'm going to mess up, and I pressed my fingers to his lips, stopping the anxious spiral. The beast told me, I admitted. He froze. What? All night, it talked. Told me things you think, things you feel, things you're too afraid to say out loud. I smiled softly. So I already knew, and I'm still here. The beast talks to you? He looked horrified. Tamara, what did it say? What did I? It said you think I'm beautiful, that you regret hurting me, that you're afraid I'll leave. I stood on my toes, pressing my forehead to his, and it said you're falling in love with me. Which is convenient, because I'm falling in love with you too. The expression on his face was worth every terrifying moment of the night. Pure joy, mixed with disbelief, mixed with hope. Really? He whispered. Really? Even though you're a mess. Even though we're both figuring this out as we go. Even though, he kissed me again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. It was claiming and promise and choice all at once, the mate bond blazing between us like the dawn breaking overhead. When we finally surfaced for air, Harry was smiling a real, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Come on, he said, taking my hand. Let's get out of this cursed cave. I want to show you something. Now? You've been shifted all night. You should rest. Now, he insisted. Trust me. And I did. Chapter 8. Harry led me not back to the pack house, but out into the eastern woods. Dawn was painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, and the forest was alive with birdsong and the rustle of small creatures beginning their day. Where are we going? I asked, though I followed willingly, my hand still clasped in his. Somewhere I haven't been since my mother died, he said. Somewhere she loved. We walked for perhaps 20 minutes, deep enough into the territory that the pack house disappeared behind us. Then the trees opened into a clearing I'd never seen before. A perfect circle of grass dotted with wildflowers, surrounded by ancient oaks that formed a natural cathedral. In the center of the clearing stood a simple stone marker. My mother's memorial, Harry said softly. My father had her body burned according to tradition, but he put this here, a place to remember her. He used to come here every day after she died. Then he stopped coming altogether, and eventually he died too. I approached the marker carefully. It was inscribed with simple words: Elena Thornridge, beloved Luna, true mate, forever remembered. After my father died, I couldn't bear to come here, Harry continued. Every time I tried, I just felt this crushing weight of all the love I'd lost. All the ways I'd failed to be what they needed me to be. You didn't fail them, I said gently. Didn't I? My mother got sick and I couldn't save her. My father died of grief and I couldn't comfort him. I inherited an alpha position and spent 4 years neglecting half my pack's needs because I didn't know how to fill the void they left. He moved to sit on the grass near the memorial, and I sat beside him. The morning sun was warm on my face, and the clearing felt peaceful, sacred even. But you brought me here now, I said. Harry was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts, because I realized something tonight, watching you sit vigil for my beast without flinching. My parents had something extraordinary, a bond so deep that when one died, the other couldn't survive without them. My father always told me that was weakness, that an alpha should be stronger than his emotions, should never need anyone that much. But your grandfather thought differently, I said, remembering the riddle book. He did. He thought that kind of love was the strongest thing in the world, that choosing to be vulnerable with someone, to need them, to let them see all your broken parts that took more courage than any battle. Harry turned to look at me, his ice blue eyes intense. I've been so afraid of becoming my father, of loving you so much that if I lost you, I wouldn't survive it. But I think I've had it backwards this whole time. What do you mean? I thought strength was staying in control, staying distant, never needing anyone. But you've shown me that real strength is being vulnerable anyway. It's staying when you could leave. It's loving someone even when they've given you every reason not to. It's sitting with a monster all night because you made a promise. My throat tightened with emotion. Harry, I want to do this right, he said. And to my shock, he shifted position, moving from sitting to kneeling before me, taking both my hands in his. I know we're already mated, already bound by moon law and blood and ceremony, but that was forced. That was me claiming you like property, marking you with cruelty, giving you no choice in any of it. What are you doing? I whispered, though I think I knew. I'm asking. His voice was raw, honest, completely stripped of pretense. Tamara Thornridge, my mate, my Luna, the woman who's shown me what real strength looks like, will you choose this? Choose me? Not because the moon goddess commanded it, not because you're obligated by pack law, but because you actually want to? Tears spilled down my cheeks. That's not how it works. We're already mated. I don't care how it's supposed to work. I'm asking you to choose me anyway. Every day. The same way you chose to stay with my beast last night. The same way you've chosen to build something here instead of taking the easy exile. His grip on my hands tightened. I'm asking you to marry me, Tamara. Really marry me. Not a mating ceremony where I treated you like a burden, but a real wedding where I promised to spend the rest of my life earning the choice you're making right now. The sun was fully risen now, bathing the clearing in golden light. Birds sang in the trees. The wildflowers swayed in a gentle breeze, and Harry knelt before me, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified I'd say no. But how could I possibly say no? Yes, I said through my tears. Yes, I choose you. I choose this. I choose us. The smile that broke across his face was incandescent. He pulled me into his arms, and we held each other there in that sacred clearing, while the morning painted everything in shades of new beginning. I'm going to make you so many promises, he murmured against my hair, and I'm going to keep every single one, starting with this. I will never mark you in anger again. I will never make you feel like you're less than extraordinary, and I will spend every day proving that you were exactly who I needed all along. That's a lot of promises, I said, pulling back to look at him. What if you mess up? Then I'll apologize. And try again. And keep trying until I get it right. He cupped my face gently. Because you're worth the effort, Tamara. You've always been worth it. We stayed in that clearing until the sun was high overhead, talking about everything and nothing, about what a real wedding might look like, something small and intimate, not the political spectacle our mating ceremony had been, about the future of the pack, the Alpha Council, the library restoration, about children someday, maybe, if fate blessed us that way, and adoption, if it didn't, about building a life together that was based on choice, not obligation. When we finally walked back to the pack house, hand in hand, I felt lighter than I had in years, like I'd put down a burden I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The weeks that followed were a strange inversion of our early days. Where before Harry had been cold and distant, now he was attentive, affectionate in ways that made the pack do double takes. He'd seek me out throughout the day, stealing kisses in empty corridors, pulling me into his office just to talk, joining me in the library every evening without fail. The scar on my neck remained raised and angry, a permanent reminder of our brutal beginning, but Harry developed a habit of kissing it softly whenever we were alone, like he could somehow heal it with tenderness now that cruelty had created it. "I'm sorry," he'd whisper against the damaged skin. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I'd reply, and I did. Some wounds healed with time, others just became part of your story. We held our wedding 6 weeks after that full moon night. A small ceremony in the clearing where Elena's memorial stood, attended only by our closest pack members. Dessa stood as my witness, crying happy tears through the entire thing. Harry's beta, a gruff man named Cole who'd been quietly managing pack security, stood as his. This time, when we spoke our vows, they were real. "I promise to choose you," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Every day, for the rest of my life. In strength and in weakness, in joy and in sorrow, in the easy moments and the impossible ones. I promise to be your partner, your Luna, your friend. I promise to sit with your darkness and celebrate your light. I promise that you are enough, exactly as you are." Harry's voice was rough with emotion when it was his turn. "I promise to earn your choice, every day, for the rest of my life. I promise to be gentle with your trust, to honor your strength, to never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are. I promise to be the mate my grandfather would have been proud of, to build a bond based on freedom rather than chains. I promise that you are treasured, always." When we kissed this time, the entire pack howled their approval, a sound of joy rather than obligation, celebration rather than duty. And when Harry marked me again, gently, reverently, on the opposite side of my neck, it didn't hurt. It felt like coming home. 3 months later, I was in the library when Dessa rushed in, her face flushed with excitement. "Luna, Luna, come quickly. What's wrong?" I set down the book I'd been cataloging, alarmed by her urgency. "Nothing's wrong. It's just come see." She dragged me through the pack house to the main hall, where a crowd had gathered. As I pushed through, I saw Vera standing there, no longer pregnant, and holding a small bundle wrapped in soft blue fabric. "Luna Tamara," she called out, beaming. "I wanted you to be one of the first to meet him. This is Thomas. Thomas Harry, actually. We named him partly after your mate. Silas says it's because Harry's council idea probably prevented a war, but really it's because we both admire what you two have built together." I moved closer, peering down at the tiny face peeking out from the blankets. Baby Thomas had dark hair like his father and eyes that would probably turn green like his mother's. He was perfect. "He's beautiful," I breathed. "Congratulations. Would you like to hold him?" Vera offered. I hesitated, then carefully took the infant, cradling him against my chest. He was so small, so fragile, so completely perfect. Something ached in my chest, not quite pain, but a longing I'd tried not to acknowledge. I still couldn't shift. Still had no wolf. The likelihood of carrying a child to term was uncertain at best. Harry appeared at my side. He always seemed to know when I needed him now, and wrapped an arm around my waist. "He's handsome," Harry said to Vera and Silas. "Congratulations, the pack is blessed by his arrival." After the appropriate pleasantries, Harry gently guided me away from the crowd, up to our private chambers. We'd moved into shared quarters 2 weeks after the wedding, and I'd learned that Harry was surprisingly domestic, neat to the point of obsession, with a tendency to reorganize my book stacks when he thought I wasn't looking. "Talk to me," he said quietly once we were alone. "What's going on in that brilliant head of yours?" I sat down on our bed, a massive thing that could easily fit 3 people, but usually just held two of us tangled together. I was just thinking about children, about whether we'll ever have our own, he finished gently. Yes. Harry sat beside me, taking my hand. Do you want children? I think so. Someday. But I don't know if my body can. I trailed off, the old shame of inadequacy rising up. I'm broken, Harry. You know this. Wolfless, probably infertile. You should have a mate who can give you heirs. Stop. His voice was firm but not unkind. First of all, you're not broken, you're different. And there's nothing wrong with that. Second, I don't want a mate. I want you. Only you. If we have biological children, that's wonderful. If we don't, that's fine too. But your bloodline can continue through adoption if necessary. Tamara, there are orphaned pups in every territory, children who need homes and families. If we can't have biological children, we'll give a home to ones who need us. He cupped my face, making me look at him. You are enough. You've always been enough. With or without a wolf. With or without children. You are enough exactly as you are. The words hit something deep inside me, a wound I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Tears spilled over, and Harry pulled me against his chest, holding me while I cried out years of feeling inadequate, worthless, broken. I love you, he murmured into my hair. I love you, I love you, I love you. And nothing, not children, not wolves, not anything, will ever change that. When I finally pulled back, tear-stained and probably splotchy, he was smiling softly. Besides, he said, if we do adopt, think how much fun we'll have teaching them riddles. We can be the weird adoptive parents who answer every question with a philosophical puzzle. Despite everything, I laughed. That sounds perfect, actually. Good. Now come here, you've been cataloging books all day and you need rest. It's barely afternoon. So? I'm the alpha. I can declare mandatory nap time if I want. He pulled me down onto the bed, wrapping around me like a shield. Besides, I had patrol all night. I'm exhausted. Keep me company. I settled against him, feeling his heartbeat steady under my cheek. This is just an excuse to cuddle. Maybe. Is that a problem? Not even a little bit. We dozed off like that, wrapped together in the afternoon sunlight, and when I woke hours later, Harry was sitting up and watching me with the softest expression. What? I mumbled, still half asleep. I was just thinking about that first riddle, he said. What can be given but never bought, broken but never held, kept but never seen? A promise. I recited automatically. Exactly. And I was thinking we've both kept our promises, haven't we? You promised to stay, to try, to build something here. I promised to be better, to earn your choice, to prove you were worth everything. He brushed hair from my face. We kept our promises even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. We did. I agreed. Then I want to make you a new promise. His voice was serious now. I promise that 30 years from now, when we're old and gray and probably still arguing about how to organize the library, I will still choose you. Every day. Without hesitation. My heart felt too full for my chest. That's quite a promise. I know. But I mean it. He leaned down, kissing me softly. What about you? Any promises you want to make? I thought about it, about the broken Omega I'd been, about the Luna I'd become, about the future stretching before us full of possibility and challenge and love. I promise, I said slowly, that even when you're being insufferable, which is often, I will still love you. I promise that even when you shift during the full moon, I'll sit vigil. I promise that I will never stop choosing you, choosing us, choosing this life we're building together. Even when I reorganize your books? Even then. Though I make no promises about not hiding your riddle book when you're particularly annoying. He laughed. That full, genuine laugh I'd come to treasure. Fair enough. Epilogue. 1 year later. The library was finally complete. Every book catalogued, every shelf restored, every damaged volume either repaired or respectfully archived. It had taken a full year of work, but the result was breathtaking. A testament to pack history, to knowledge preserved, to the love that had built it. I stood in the center of the room, turning slowly to take it all in. Harry had commissioned a plaque for the entrance. The Elena Thornridge Memorial Library, restored with love by Luna Tamara. You know, Harry's voice came from behind me. My mother would have loved you. I turned to find him leaning in the doorway, watching me with that expression that still made my heart skip part love, part wonder, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. You think so? I know so. She valued kindness and intelligence and persistence, all things you have in abundance. He moved into the room, pulling me against him, and she would have loved that you gave me back this space, that you made it beautiful again. I leaned into his embrace, breathing in his scent, pine and snow and home. It was always beautiful. It just needed someone to care for it. Like me, he murmured. I was always worth loving. I just needed you to show me how. We stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other and the peaceful quiet of thousands of books bearing witness. I have something to tell you, I said finally, my heart racing. Good news or bad news? I'm not sure yet. Maybe both. I pulled back enough to look at his face. The pack healer examined me yesterday. I've been feeling strange, and I wanted to make sure nothing was wrong. Harry's expression immediately shifted to concern. Are you sick? Injured? What? I'm pregnant. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Harry stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. You're, what? Pregnant. About 6 weeks, the healer thinks. She says it's rare but not impossible for wolfless omegas to conceive, and I didn't get to finish because Harry swept me up, spinning me around while laughing with pure joy. When he set me down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. We're having a baby, he said wonderingly. You're having my baby. I am. But Harry, you need to know, the healer says it's high risk. Without a wolf, my body might not. Stop. He pressed his forehead to mine. We'll handle whatever comes. Together. But right now, right this moment, let me just be happy. Let me celebrate that the woman I love is carrying our child. Okay, I whispered. Okay. He dropped to his knees then, pressing his face against my still flat stomach. Hello in there, he said softly. I'm your father. And I promise you, I'm going to be better than my father was. I'm going to teach you riddles and show you how to be strong without being cruel. I'm going to love your mother every day of your life, so you know what real love looks like. And I'm going to tell you every single day that you are enough. Exactly as you are. I ran my fingers through his hair, my own tears falling freely now. That's a lot of promises. I know, but I keep my promises now. He looked up at me. I learned from the best. 6 months later, on a cold winter night when the full moon hung heavy in the sky, I went into labor. It was complicated, the healer had warned us it would be. Without a wolf to aid the process, my body struggled. For hours, Harry paced outside the birthing room, occasionally shifting partially when his anxiety overwhelmed him, until finally the healer let him in. She needs you, was all she said. Harry came to my side, taking my hand, letting me squeeze hard enough to bruise as another contraction hit. I can't, I gasped. Harry, I can't do this. Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know, remember? That's a lie. I'm weak, You sat with a monster all night because you promised you would. You reorganized an entire pack household in a month. You stood up to 3 allied alphas at dinner. You restored a library, 1 book at a time. You loved me even when I gave you every reason not to. He pressed his lips to my forehead. You can do this, Tamara. I know you can. And somehow, impossibly, I did. Our daughter was born just before dawn, tiny and pink and screaming with impressive lung capacity. The healer placed her on my chest, and I looked down at her perfect face and felt my entire world realign. She's beautiful, Harry breathed, his voice thick with emotion. She's perfect. You're both perfect. What should we name her? I asked, unable to look away from our daughter. Harry was quiet for a moment. Then, Elena. After my mother. If that's all right with you. I looked up at him, this alpha who'd been so broken, who'd learned to heal, who'd become the mate his grandfather had believed in. Elena, Tamara, I said. So she has both of us. Elena Tamara Thornridge, Harry agreed, running a gentle finger down our daughter's cheek. Welcome to the world, little one. You're already so loved. That night, after the healer had left, and baby Elena was sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, Harry and I lay together in the darkness. You know what I just realized? He said quietly. What? The moon goddess did answer my prayer. I asked for a strong mate who could survive being bound to me, who could give me strong heirs, and she gave me exactly that, just not in the way I expected. I'm not sure I qualify as strong, I said. You're the strongest person I've ever met, just not in the ways I was looking for. He pulled me closer. You survived being bound to me even when I was cruel. You gave me an heir despite every biological obstacle, and you did it all with grace and intelligence, and more courage than any warrior I've ever known. So you're saying the moon goddess has a sense of humor? I'm saying she's smarter than I am. She knew what I needed even when I didn't. He kissed my temple. Thank you, Tamara. For choosing me. For staying. For giving me a family I thought I'd never have. Thank you for learning how to be chosen, I replied. For keeping your promises. For proving that bonds don't have to be cages. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other while our daughter breathed softly nearby, and I thought about riddles and promises and the strange twisting path that had brought us here. I'd started this journey as a broken Omega punished at her own mating ceremony. I'd collapsed under the weight of my mate's cruelty and my own perceived inadequacy, but I'd gotten up again. I'd kept my promises. I'd chosen to stay and build something real from the ruins of a forced bond. And in the end, I'd learned the truth that had been hidden in Harry's grandfather's riddles all along. Real strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up anyway. Real love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The mate bond hummed contentedly between us. No longer a chain, not quite a cage. Just a connection. Freely maintained. Daily chosen. A promise kept. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's story, you'll love the Alpha's Second Chances. It's a captivating werewolf romance about second chances, forgiveness, and finding strength in vulnerability. The cover is shown on your screen, and you can find the link in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought of today's story. See you in the next one.